Together and united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our land.
The government of national unity has been formulated by various political formations within those 9 parties, which is 50% of the parties in the 18 that are represented in the National Assembly. 9 of those are in the government of national unity, and with 7 of those within the executive of the country. As you saw, other political formations like Rise Mzansi taking the position of Scopa chairperson through its president, Songezo Ziba. I'm going to bring in the Secretary General of the party of the ANC, that would be Fikile Mbalula, who is largely the one who is the custodian of the National Assembly.
And guys, to be honest, this is just a question, man. If the government of national unity fails, is there any hope for South Africa? If the government of national unity actually fails, is there any hope for South Africa? I'm not asking this because I'm trying to be pessimistic. I'm asking this because I'm actually quite happy about this government of national unity thing. I'm happy with the fact that the ANC is not the one governing the country alone anymore. I'm happy with the fact that the ANC does not have the arrogance they used to have anymore. For the past 30 years, South Africans have actually been trying to warn the ANC, telling the ANC that, guys, please tone it down. Can you please take care of the country? Can you please make sure that the corrupt cadres are dealt with? Can you please make sure that we have proper infrastructure? These are the things that South Africans have actually been crying about for the past 30 years. And the ANC, in their arrogance, they have been looking at South Africans as if South Africans are idiots. They have been looking at South Africans as if South Africans are stupid. And right now, lucky enough, we actually have other political parties governing with the ANC. We actually have other political parties in key departments in government. So with all that being said, if the government of national unity actually fails, is there any hope for South Africa? Because right now, I don't think that South Africans are going to vote for a single party to be the majority. I don't think that we are about to see the people of this country ever voting for another political party to govern alone. I think the ANC has given us enough nightmares when it comes to a single party governing alone. I don't think that there's ever going to be a time where a single party governs the country alone. And again, man, I'm also worried about the sabotages, man. Because we are happy about the government of national unity. We are happy about that, about the fact that we have other ministers from other political parties. We are happy about the fact that the likes of Songezo Zibi are chairing Scopa. We are happy about the fact that the likes of Ian Cameron are the chairpersons of the Committee of Police. We are happy about all of those things. But will there be any sabotage? Will there be any sabotage? Because at the end of the day, these people are competing with each other. You can see, even when you go online, the ministers are already trying to outdo each other right now on social media. So is that going to be a good thing for the country in the long run, or is that going to hurt us in the long run? I don't know. These are the things that when I sit down and look at the government of national unity, despite me actually being a huge fan of the government of national unity, I'm actually worried, man, sometimes about the potential sabotage that might actually come with the government of national unity. What's going to happen when other ministers, especially the ministers from the ANC, start feeling like the ministers from the DA are outperforming them, when they start feeling like the ministers from the IFP, the ministers from Patriotic Alliance are outperforming them? How are they going to react to that? Because we know that looking at the government of national unity going into 2029, South Africans are actually going to judge the political parties based on what their ministers have done in the governance. If your ministers have done quite well, you are sure that you are going to get a lot of votes, and it's going to be easy for those political parties to actually campaign and say that, guys, you saw with our ministers of basic education, you saw with our minister of Home Affairs, you saw with our ministers of public works and infrastructure, we have actually done a lot for South Africa. Now this is the DA saying that we have actually done a lot for South Africa. So can you please trust us with the vote so that we can govern this country alone? So whether we are happy about the fact that these people are governing together, but at the same time we have to be realistic about what might actually come. We have to be realistic about what might actually come. So these are the things that actually sometimes actually makes me worried, man. And I'm like, geez, how is everything going to pan out in the long run? How is everything going to pan out in the long run? Because after all, man, these are the things that people are not talking about. These are the things that people are not talking about. The potential sabotage. These are the things that people might actually are not talking about. Because right now, when you look at, for an example, you look at Gayton McKenzie and what Gayton McKenzie is doing, releasing the list of the artists that have been benefiting for South Africa. You look at the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, Dean McPherson. He has already uncovered 300 million that was stolen from the department in the past 10 years. And how long has he been in the office? How long has he been in the office? So when is he going to start stepping on the toes of the people that do not want to be exposed? You have to remember that the ANC has been in charge for the past 30 years. So these people have a trail of mess in these departments. So when are they going to start to react? When are they going to react with these exposes that are happening left, right, and center? We are also looking at the Minister of Basic Education, Siviwe Kwarube from the DA. We want to know, man, what actually happened in that department in the past 30 years. We are also looking at other departments. I mean, people are actually asking other ministers to uncover what happened in those ministries in the past 30 years. So it means that the ANC is going to be destroyed by these exposes that are being made by these new ministers that are in the cabinet today. The ANC is going to head. So how long is the ANC actually going to sit down and allow these people to head them? Will the ANC sit down and say, it is fine, expose us, and expose us, tell the people about the crimes that we have been committing, tell them about the crimes that we have been committing? Of course, they are going to defend themselves. Of course, they are going to defend themselves, and this is where you're going to start to see the sabotage coming in. Man, I don't know, man. Maybe sometimes I overthink about this stuff, man. Maybe sometimes I just overthink about this stuff, but I guess it is just me accepting the reality of what we are dealing with right now. This is just me accepting the reality of what we are dealing with. I remember before we went into the elections, I used to say that if I'm a new political party that is in charge of South Africa for the next 5 years, I'm not particularly going to focus on giving South Africans the services. Of course, they're going to get the services as they are used to, but I'm actually going to focus on what the ANC has been doing for the past 30 years. And it looks like this is what the ministers of other political parties are doing, looking at the mess that the ANC was doing for the past 30 years. It's only a matter of time before big names are actually dropped. It's only a matter of time before big names are actually dropped, that such and such actually benefited. Such and such is the one that allowed this massive corruption to actually take place. You look right now at the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure. Dean McPherson, man, has been in an office for like what, week, 2 weeks. He has already uncovered huge corruption. What about that guy? Zithle Sikalala. Zithle Sikalala was there for the longest time. What about him? What about him? Why didn't these people actually release this information to South Africans when the ANC was the one governing the country? So it means that at some point, these new political parties are going to step in the toes of the ANC. And this is where the war is actually going to start.
As the Secretary General of the ANC at Luthuli House, Mr. Mbalula, rather interesting composition of chairpersons of portfolio committees. How did those particular negotiations come about, knowing that Helen Ziller had said that they are having issues, and you being a stumbling block as Luthuli House when it comes to the chairpersons of portfolio committees in Parliament?
Thank you very much, and thank you for having us. We have agreed on a model of a GNU, with characteristics of confidence and supply, which means that you will have agreement with political parties in relation to what must happen in the legislature, and working with them in the legislature as well, not only in the executive. So in this particular instance, we have adopted that particular model. It's uncharted waters, and is the first time of its kind that some of the committees will go to the opposition to respect the will of the people. And in this particular instance is that where we are not in charge, political parties will take over, and that means some are also serving in the executive. They don't have the numbers to serve the executive in the executive and also serve in the committees, so they've got to double up.
And thinking about what I just mentioned, is this Ramaphosa's grand plan to get rid of corrupt cadres in the ANC? I don't know. Is this a way of Ramaphosa to get rid of some of the people that are actually making it hard for him to govern within the ANC? Because if these people are actually releasing this kind of information so early on, it means that it is going to get to the ANC cadres not so long. It's only a matter of time before the top brass of the ANC is actually exposed in this corruption. So is it a way of Ramaphosa, or is it Ramaphosa's way of actually trying to get rid of the people that are making it hard for him to govern? Guys, I don't know. These are just conspiracy theories. What I'm saying right now, I do not have any proof for anything that I'm saying right now. These are just speculations. These are just speculations. And I'm just looking, and I'm trying to look at the dark side of the government of national unity. As much as we are happy about these people coming together and clapping hands for them and putting their differences aside so that they can govern the country, but at the same time, we have to look at what potentially might go wrong in this government of national unity. And it will be naive of us to actually sit here and think that some of these things are not going to happen. It is going to be very naive of us. It is going to be very naive of us. So we have to look at everything from the both sides. And this is what I'm trying to look at, man. And thinking about it, man, it's actually scary. It's actually scary. Because we know if the government of national unity collapses, you're going to have the progressive forces, the likes of MK party and the EFF rising up. That is a given. If the government of national unity fails, these people will come to South Africans and they will say, we told you. We told you that these people will not govern the country well. We told you that these people are going to fight at the expense of the country. We told you that they are going to take each other to court. They will be governing together, but they will be taking each other to court. We told you, South Africans, but you failed to listen to us. I'm not trying to scare you guys. I'm not. I'm just trying to be as realistic as possible, man.
So it's in the main, the ANC and the DA and the Patriotic Alliance who've got and the IFP, bigger numbers, and others it is 3-3-2-2-1-1 seat. But we are happy that we found each other. We are happy with the outcome. It's not always smooth that you agree with those that you are negotiating with on everything.
How were these negotiations, particularly knowing some of the backlash you received, particularly with not understanding the statement of intent? How difficult were these negotiations, not only of the executive, but also of the formation of the portfolio committee chairpersons?
The engagement with parties first is defined by a set of principles that inform your approach in terms of engagement. And what are those set of principles? Are principles, foundational principles, agree on stability, agree on constitutionalism, agree on the rule of law, agree on redress. Those are the things that we agree with, that bind us together, irrespective of ideological background. A minimum program in terms of what we want to do to achieve the result of governing the country and govern it well in terms of good governance. And we found each other with a majority of the parties in the National Assembly. And as the leading party, which got most votes, albeit with a reduced majority, we were happy to talk to everyone. And others chose not to engage, but lay down their own red lines that they will not come to the party. So negotiations in their very nature are very difficult. We did not have to negotiate our prerogatives, that we stand for Palestine, others stand for what? We stand for land redistribution and all of that, others don't. We did not have to negotiate that. We just have had to look at what binds us together, which means that the GNU in itself is not a melting pot. It doesn't mean when you actually participate within the GNU, you then compromise your independence, your ideological outlook, and what you stand for. So it's a question of what is good for your party in this instance. If you believe that working within the GNU at the executive level, it's your choice. It's your strategic choice. It's your tactical choice that you actually make. And then it is said to be seen going forward. We will hold things together, but we understand that we participate here to serve our people, and the people first is important. And lastly, it was to look into the national interest of the country, that we are South Africans, and we as South Africa believe in a democratic process and multipartyism and constitutional democracy, and therefore we didn't have external people to come here and force us into the table. We did it our own way and our own South African way, and bloodless election results accepted within record time. Government is up and running.
And guys, I must say that it has been very interesting to see the political shift in the country. And what the ANC is doing right now, it is something that we have been talking about pre the elections, especially when it came to the opposition parties. Some of us never actually understood the purpose of having million opposition parties when most of these people actually have the same ideas, they want the same things. So the ANC, man, I'm going to commend the ANC for actually being able to pull all of these political parties and say, guys, okay, it is fine, we have different ideologies, but at the same time, we want the same things. How about we actually ignore what actually makes us different? How about we look at the issues that are making us similar? How about we look at the issues that are bringing us together? So if the opposition parties actually done this before the elections, I have no doubt that the ANC could have been overthrown in the elections. One of the reasons why the ANC still maintained their 40% in these elections is the fact that South Africans did not believe in the mess of opposition parties, in the mess of having 2 million opposition parties. South Africans did not believe in that. And it was so easy to actually spot these political parties and say that this political party and that political party, that politician and that politician, they actually have the same ideas. They actually have the same vision. Why don't these people actually come together? Why don't they come together? It was very, like right now, it is so interesting to see this political shift that is happening in the country right now, because the ANC, it says that the door is still open to the political parties that want to come into the government of national unity. Of course, you can come. And on the other side, you have the progressive forces that says, guys, if we share the same ideology, if we have the same ideas and want the same things, there is no problem with you coming and join us. So I think at the end of the day, we're going to have two blocks in South African politics. The one block, I'm going to say, maybe let's say the right, and we're going to have this block that calls itself the left, instead of actually having the mess of many political parties. I just wish maybe these blocks can actually dilute themselves and call themselves with one name, just like the progressive forces, but instead of picking all these political parties, saying EFF, MK party, you know, it's just the progressive forces. Right now, it is just the GNU, and it's going to be easy for South Africans to actually make a decision. It's either you want the government of national unity, or it's either you want the progressive forces. It's going to be easy for South Africans. So I think it is going to benefit South Africans going into the next elections, because if the government of national unity actually succeeds, I have no doubt that they are going to move as one going into the elections. But we are not actually forgetting again what we spoke about earlier on.
There ever a point in time you as the ANC felt as if there was too much interference by those who are perceived as the owners of the means of production? I'm speaking about those who effectively control the South African economy.
There's been an over-exaggeration about capital and those who control the means of production. It has been a political and ideological abuse, in a sense, because we in the ANC, we understand our engagement with capital is unity and struggle of the opposite. There are things we agree with capital on. We want to create jobs. It is not the public sector's primary role to create jobs. You've got to do that working with the private sector. We've got to have social compacts with the private sector. So we need capital for the development of our nation and the creation of jobs. There are things that we don't agree with them about in relation to things that impact on our sovereignty and all of that. We don't agree on things that affect maybe labor and the worker rights and all of that. So ours is unity and struggle of the opposite. So the over-ideological perspective that changes us into a communist party or a socialist party is incorrect when it comes to the ANC. It's correct for those who believe that they are anti-capital and they believe in the destruction of capital for the creation of a socialist republic. We've got them right in the ANC alliance broader, which is the Communist Party. So when the Communist Party expresses...
Nah, man, the Communist Party are just the capitalists speaking socialism and communism. These guys are capitalists, man. You look at how the Communist Party guys are living. They don't live like the communists. They don't live like the communists. Even with these people from other political parties, from MK and from the EFF, you look at how they live. You look at how the top brass of this political party lives. They live like the capitalists. But whenever they stand in front of the microphones, they speak like the communists. And I think this is just to gaslight South Africans. And it is to lie to South Africans, because if you live like a capitalist, why are you standing there speaking like a communist? These people, man, do not practice what they preach. The South African Communist Party, they don't practice what they preach. They don't. They don't. How many politicians can you say, okay, that is a true communist? How many politicians can you actually look and say, you see that person over there? That is a true communist. That is a true socialist. How many of those politicians, how many politicians do we actually have in the country that we can say that this is a true communist? This is a true No, they are not. All of them, they are capitalist. They are capitalist. They are capitalist and pretending to hate capitalist system. This is what's happening. Pure capitalist pretending to hate the capitalist idea. They are just fooling South Africans, man.
Its own perspective and ideological view in relation to what must happen to capital. It doesn't shock us. We've got shock absorbers over time in relation to those matters. And then for all other political parties, we believe that let us not just confine ourselves into hollow ideological perspectives that are not sustainable, whereas the people have spoken, and they've spoken in the manner in which they have, and they did not give us outright majority, all of us. So we needed to come to the table and talk about what needs to happen for this great nation of ours.
But why choose to work with the Democratic Alliance as opposed to a party that you are of the same ideological inclination, which is the former Youth League leaders and now leading the Economic Freedom Fighters? Why not work with the EFF but choose to form a broader government of national unity when you and the EFF and the MK party combined have over 66% that is needed to amend the constitution, for instance, to change section 25 of the constitution, which is a resolution of your own conference?
If the EFF still want to work with the ANC in relation to certain issues in terms of the National Assembly, we are ready to gauge, amend, and to engage.
And man, like Samkela Maseko is simply trying to be simplistic, man. Samkela Maseko is simply trying to be simplistic. The reason why the ANC went with the government of national unity is to make sure that they protect themselves. So if the ANC had actually decided to go into governance with the EFF and MK party, how long was it going to take before those political parties actually destroy the ANC? How long was it going to take? I mean, you had Floyd Shivambu, the deputy president of the EFF. You remember last time he did an interview and he said that even if the ANC goes into coalition with the EFF, they will still come after Ramaphosa. So do you think that when the ANC guys are sitting down, they think that this is just about Ramaphosa? No. It shows that even if we get into governance with you, we are going to destroy you. So the reason why the ANC did not pick these two political parties, they understand very well that these two political parties are going to destroy them. Jacob Zuma started a political party, MK party, on the side. And what did that political party do to the ANC? It destroyed the ANC. It destroyed the ANC. The ANC today does not have an outright majority because of MK party. So why would the ANC go and work with the same political party that has destroyed them? Why would the ANC go back to the people that have destroyed this organization? It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So by going with the route of the government of national unity and by inviting as many politicians, as many political parties as possible, is to make sure that the ANC preserves itself, is to make sure that we are protected as the African National Congress, because we know the ambitions of those people in the EFF, and we know the ambitions of those people in MK party. They hate the ANC. They hate the ANC. They don't want the president of the ANC. They hate the secretary general of the ANC. Basically, they think ANC it is nothing but a group of idiots that needs to be disposed. And the ANC knows that. The ANC knows that. So even if the ANC preaches the same things as the EFF and MK party, at the end of the day, the ANC understands that it will be dangerous for them to actually go into coalition with the EFF and MK party, because EFF and MK party are going to make sure that the ANC has been destroyed. And this is what the likes of Fikile Mbalula does not want. This is the likes of what Fikile Mbalula does not want. So this whole idea that we can just get into the governance together because of same ideologies, man, like sometimes you just have to look at things at how they are properly. You have to look at the things at how they are properly. So this is just a simple way of looking at this dynamic between the ANC, MK party and the EFF, and the ANC opting to go with the route of the government of national unity.
The constitution, for instance, to change section 25 of the constitution, which is a resolution of your own conference.
If the EFF still want to work with the ANC in relation to certain issues in terms of the National Assembly, we are ready to gauge, amend, and to engage on. Let's not confine ourselves to a corner where in which we simply define one model. We have looked at 5 models as the ANC before we arrived at this decision. First was a grand coalition, one party with many parties you work with. And then the second was a minority government with elements of supply and confidence. You create minority government, you agree with other parties to work in the legislatures in terms of them holding sway and accountability to the governing minority government in the legislatures. That is the second. And then the third is GNU, which is a government of national unity. You bring all parties and then you form government. And then you define that formation of government through a statement of intent. And the other one is to rerun the election. After 14 days, you don't agree, you go back. And the last one is to be backbenching. We would have been the biggest opposition party in the world if we chose to go back to the benches, because 6 million people said, we don't want you in the backbenches, we want you to govern. And then if you can't find each other in terms of govern, you've got an option to rerun. Unfortunately, we found each other. Now, it would have been an easy thing that you can work with all these parties that you talk about. We came with these models, and then we eliminated and came with the GNU. Those parties then said they don't want to participate in the GNU, and then that is it. So we had to move on because that is our position. So it's not a question of one party, absorbing another and all of that. It's a question of coming together of political parties to form government and run government. It has happened before in our country. It's a new model which is happening outside the model of the transitional constitution. But it is the political will of political parties to come together and work together for the people's interest.
And even during the negotiations, man, if you still remember how the political parties that are not in the government of national unity pretended like the ANC and the DA, they are having the worst time negotiating. The ANC could have just picked the EFF and MK party, and the negotiations would have been done in like 1 day or 2 days. Like some of these utterances, they just make you realize how naive people are. To think that the ANC would be in a negotiation room with the EFF and MK party, and things would be easier. And things would be easier in a negotiation room. There is no way the negotiations are going to be easy. The negotiations are never easy. So this whole idea that, you see what the ANC and the DA are doing to each other, man. The ANC is a sellout political party. They should have worked with the EFF and MK party, and the negotiations would have been concluded in 2 days. It's a lie. It's a lie. It's a lie, and it just shows you how naive people are to actually think that 3 political parties can enter in one room and negotiate and everything will be so easy. It just shows you how naive people are. But this is a narrative that they actually managed to drive to the people and say that, you see, the DA wants 12 posts. How can the DA want 12 ministerial positions? The DA, it has ANC by the scrotums. Forgetting that this is just the negotiations. Because at the end of the day, the DA only got 6 ministerial positions. These are just the negotiations. People come into the negotiation rooms and they make demands, but it doesn't mean that those demands will actually be met. This is the same thing that the EFF would have done. This is the same thing that MK party would have done. That we want such and such position. This is what we want as different political parties. And the ANC and these political parties would have to go back to the negotiating room and say, no, we cannot afford you these ministerial positions as the ANC. So the idea that the negotiations would have been easier, man, it's a lie. It's a lie. And I don't know how these people actually managed to sell this narrative to the people. The ANC was bound to have tough negotiations, whether it's in the government of national unity, whether they go with the DA, or whether they go with the EFF and MK party. At the end of the day, the ANC was bound to have tough negotiations.
Narrowly serving your own party and so on, and leave all others outside. So we don't do that. So we chose this path, and we believe this path will work for South Africa.
Why didn't you choose a rerun, particularly knowing that you had been hammered in a province like KwaZulu-Natal, which ultimately is the main reason you've dipped under 50%? Because if there was no MK party, you would arguably be sitting at 52, 53%, because 14% of your votes went to this particular formation that was formed about 3 months before an election.
Yes, it is like an easy decision to make about let's just go to a rerun and then we're back to the trenches and then fighting on. There's no guarantee that from where you have dipped, you will not dip further. Equally, there is no guarantee that you could do better and even do better than where you were.
And you have to consider the fact that you have South Africans, man, participating in this whole thing. So do you think that South Africans actually had an appetite to go to the polls again? After spending hours and hours standing on long queues, do you think that South Africans would actually have an appetite for a rerun? I don't think that people would actually go to the polls. I don't think that South Africans would have went to the polls simply because of how the elections in 2024 actually panned out. The fact that a lot of people were not able to vote, a lot of people were standing on queues, man. There were some suspicious activities taking place. So I don't think that the South Africans actually had an appetite or would have had an appetite to go back to the rerun. I don't think that South Africans would have had an appetite because people were so pumped up with the elections. But when you think about everything that actually happened, some voting stations had load shedding, some machines were not working, some people were not able to vote, and all of these things, many people have to think about them. Do you think that South Africans would have had an appetite to go back to the polls? I don't think so. I don't think so. So a rerun was a definite no-no.
So both sides of the coin could actually mean a disaster for you. So when you look at models, you don't only look at models and scenarios, you look at risks. So each one of them carried risks. But the most important one, which is the GNU, it meant that you work with everybody in the interest of the people. GNU was embraced by all South Africans, leave alone those who want to define ideological volatility and narrowly that they are left than left itself. The majority of South Africans across embraced GNU. And we believe out of GNU ourselves, we will survive because it begins to teach us a new terrain, uncharted waters, but organizationally. It begins to communicate a message that power is not permanent and therefore it's not a given. You work for it. If you are a revolutionary party, remain a revolutionary party with all the ingredients of a revolutionary party. Don't become a fly-by-night and think that it is a given that people will vote for you all the material times. You've got to work and work for power and work to respect the people who put you into power. And the ANC will survive because the ANC is a revolutionary party. And for all what it stands for, it has learned better from local government elections, 46% to 40%. Now that we are now on the doorstep, we don't have to change the gear. Do the right things that we said we must do in relation to renewal. It's not negotiable. We now know where are the wrong apples in our party, where they were and all of that. And some of them have left in majority. But some of them will come back because they are not they've rehabilitated themselves in the process. They'll become better people when they come back. But the incorrigible will not. They will go where they belong. So there's no longer theory now. We know what we're dealing with. We have passed the era of the election, and this is the result.
Dr. Gamadlayise John Hlophe, you voted in the ANC in support for him to be part of the Judicial Services Commission, yet you're the very same party in the last parliament that voted for his impeachment. Double standards?
I wouldn't say that those are double standards with regard to Judge Hlophe. The ANC holds no brief for Hlophe, Dr. Hlophe, first and foremost, and or any member of any other party. And the discontent about John Hlophe.
And guys, is Fikile Mbalula reading his answers? Is Fikile Mbalula reading its answers?
As nomination is valid. And the ANC position on the JSC discussion in the House was not to say there is no basis. There is no basis for consent. If we were to vote, we will vote for him to go out, but there was no vote and there was no division. What our chief whip said in word was to say that the rules in terms of eligibility of a member to stand are moot when it comes to an individual who's impeached. And that is why we talk about Section 47.
I mean, like, it's clear as day. Like, Hlophe and the MK party, they just took an advantage of the loophole that is there. If the rules are moot about a candidate that is going to stand, especially if that candidate has been impeached, if there are no rules about that candidate, then they can take advantage of that. They can take advantage of that. And this is exactly what MK party and Hlophe did. They simply took advantage of the loophole that is there. They simply took advantage of the loophole that is there. So I don't know why people are making a lot of noise that, yeah, as a matter of principle, because Judge Hlophe was impeached, so it makes no sense for him to actually sit in a committee that appoints judges. But truth of the matter is that there are no rules about what happens if a judge has been impeached. There are no rules. So you cannot persecute someone based on your principles. You cannot do that. We have to be consistent when we come to applying the rule of law. We have to be consistent. We have to be consistent. This is just an own goal for the likes of Fikile Mbalula, because these are the things that they were supposed to deal with in the past 30 years. Instead, they were busy looting, they were busy doing as they please as the African National Congress, as the majority governing party. They didn't think that one day they would actually be forced to look at these matters like this one. They didn't think they would be forced to look at the matters like this one. So, Hlophe, whether you like him or not, but he's a member of parliament and he's actually allowed to participate in everything that the members of parliament are participating in. He's a member of parliament. He is a member of parliament. So these are the things that the ANC was supposed to have dealt with. But right now, it's coming back to bite them. It's coming back to bite them because they didn't deal with it. So whose fault is it that Hlophe and MK party, they're actually taking advantage of the loophole that is there? I remember there's an interview that I watched on Newsroom, and it was an interview between this guy who comes. I think that organization is called Judges Matter, and the other guy who comes from, I don't know, man. And they were actually debating about this whole thing of Hlophe. And the guy from the Judges Matter says that as a matter of principle, Judge Hlophe cannot be there. But they say, man, the rules are not clear. The rules are not clear. Of course, like, everyone knows that if you have been impeached, you have no business sitting in a committee that actually appoints judges. If you are a judge and you are an impeached judge, you have no business sitting in a committee that appoints the judges, as a matter of principle. But where is the rule of law? Where is the rule of law? Where is the rule that actually says that people like Hlophe cannot sit in that committee? There is no rule that is clear that people like Hlophe, people who have been impeached, cannot sit in that committee. So what are they going to do? They simply took advantage of it, man, and you cannot blame them. After all, this is politics.
That must then be looked at in terms of addressing that question, because where the rules are now are simply addressing the insolvency of an individual. But it doesn't say that if you are somewhere, you have exercised this particular part, you have played this part, and therefore you cannot be part on this other side. So it is on the shoulders of the parliamentarians themselves and the GNU partners to rectify this thing. And not to stand out and not do something about it. It will be an indictment if this were to be allowed. A man.
And it's an indictment on the ANC. The fact that the ANC, when they had the majority, they never dealt with this issue. It's an indictment on the ANC. It's an indictment on the ANC, the same way it will be an indictment on the partners of the Government of National Unity if they actually let it slide. If they don't actually deal with this matter, it is going to be an indictment on the whole governance of the Government of National Unity. But as we speak right now, it's an indictment on the ANC. It's an indictment on the ANC. And unfortunately, man, the Government of National Unity will have to come and clean up the mess that the ANC has caused. They will have to come and clean up the mess that the ANC has caused.
Or a woman who was a judge and impeached and found to be on the wrong, he must now sit in a panel and judge others and question them. It is morally bankrupt and incorrect.
Of course.
Must be corrected by the same parliament. So our chief whip, in word, like I said, raised the issue that when it comes to impeachment, it is moot. He did not say that we agree that Hlophe must be in the bench. That will be incorrect because we discussed that with them in Parliament. I had a discussion with them, and then I said that for us it's very clear that we were part of the parties that impeached Hlophe. We can never then be the first ones who agree that it is right for him to serve.
So then what do you then do now?
Because Hlophe will not be in Parliament as an MP if we did not impeach him. He will simply be there in the bench. And that is why when he speaks himself, he says, I no longer want that title. I'm a doctor, I'm qualified. Whatever doctor he is, he's a doctor, and that is it, he's an MP. But we've got to deal with this lacuna in relation to our statutes in Parliament, where in which we have now been visited by the Hlophe phenomenon right inside Parliament. We need to deal with that.
What steps are you going to do to deal with
Section
this matter?
47, members of Parliament, including our caucus, must then consider this matter and put it on the table and then address it.
When are you going to put it on the table?
It's a question of parties engaging among themselves and talking about it and attending to it as soon as possible.
KwaZulu-Natal, were you betrayed by your own structures?
It was not a betrayal. It is a political outcome where in which the Zuma factor for some time in Natal has been there. And Zuma chose this moment knowing very well that in the body politic of KZN there is a void. Umntwana kaphinda again passed away, and then the NFP is dead, and then is the IFP and the ANC, and the king is no more. So there's nobody in the presidency of national government who is looked upon by the constituency base of KZN as somebody they look up to at the present moment. We suffered the blows already when we did our assessment because Shembe Church spoke against us and we lost heavily. Many municipalities in KZN. This was the second one. And then the JZ factor was a problem. The July riots and the Zuma arrest was a factor in relation to those elections. As much as there were elections that were declared and run within a short space of time, the Zuma factor has always been with us. And when Zuma now decided to take our paraphernalia and our trademark and form the party and say, I'm a double ANC member, like a double agent, don't ask me. I'm Zuma, I'm rescuing the ANC. It further polarized party members and supporters. In 2004, we registered 2/3 majority with KZN giving us between 47, 49. I don't know if we crunched the numbers. And then we got 1 million people who voted for us when Thabo Mbeki got 2/3 majority as our president.
It was 1.4 million votes.
Exactly. And then we increased when Jacob Zuma came in 2009 to 2+.
2.3 million votes.
5.3 million votes voted for us, and we got 65%. When in other provinces we dropped, KZN cushioned us. JZ became the president for the first time. An election following that, we got 62%. We performed badly in all provinces. KZN cushioned us with more than 2 million again, consistent. And now with the void that is there in KZN and all the factors I've related to you, it's not a shock. You don't have to blame it on other people. JZ, Umkhonto Wesizwe Party got support even where he did not campaign. And majority of the numbers, 2 million, came from KZN. He took some in Gauteng, in the hostels, Soweto and Alexander, and then in the eastern part of Mpumalanga, he took Umkhonto region. He became, I think, the opposition party in Mpumalanga. So that tells you a story about Jacob Zuma factor. And that is why we knew from the onset that it spells a disaster for the movement. So we never looked at the IFP in KZN as a threat. We knew that the possibility that will drop is there. And then because JZ came late, we knew that he will get the numbers. There was no doubt about it, but not to the level of 2 million number.
Meaning that you underestimated him. Knowing very well how popular he is, you still went on to underestimate him. You knew very well that he's quite popular there. But you underestimated him.
That he got. But nonetheless, it's not a shock because those numbers were with us when JZ was on our side.
Thank you very much, the Secretary General of the ANC. Last question in 1 second. Did you ever think of walking away from the GNU negotiations when it got hot in the kitchen?
No, we hold a strategic initiative. You can't move away from that. We didn't negotiate with the cap in the hand. We knew that we are not just a magnet, but we are the majority party, and we should be allowed to lead. If they don't want the arrangement of the GNU or multi-party engagement, then they can walk away and then we can go back to the bush.
Thank you.
And fight it out.
Thank you very much.
Man, it is so crazy to hear Fikile Mbalula saying that the ANC basically underestimated Jacob Zuma, knowing very well how popular Jacob Zuma is. So I think right now it is safe to say that ANC will never get those 2+3 million votes. They will never get them again because right now Jacob Zuma is an embodiment of the MK party. Jacob Zuma is now the MK party, and the MK party wants nothing to do with the ANC. So it looks like even Jacob Zuma, man, is going to die as an MK. He's going to die as an MK. So it is safe to say that the ANC will never get those votes back. They will never get those votes back. Guys, I don't know, man. Please tell me what you think. Go to the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button. And the most important part, subscribe. My name is Thomas Mabaso. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.